Welcome to SFF180 and episode 7 of the 12 Days of Halloween. Tonight, a has-been metal guitarist realizes that her successful former bandmate controls, or is controlled by, sinister dark forces that could spell peril for millions of people in We Sold Our Souls. That's the book I'm reviewing. Hello everyone, Thomas here, your host as always. Thank you so much for joining me. In the world of rock music, you are simply not going to find a group of people as passionate in their fervor, whether they're fans or musicians, as metalheads. Now, while I have a number of bands I really like, I wouldn't consider myself among the genre's diehards, but I can understand the conviction with which its most ardent fans devote themselves to the music. In We Sold Our Souls, Grady Hendrix conveys this passion so effectively that he is able to write about people performing music on stage in a way that makes you feel like you're at the concert, where every guitar chord and thundering bass line just feels like it's reaching physically into your chest cavity and squeezing. This is a novel that's simply astonishing in its ambition, dramatic range, and emotional depth, working equally well as suspenseful horror, as satire about the capricious sleaze of the music business and life on the road for a working band, and as an examination of America's vanishing middle class and the economic desperation facing so many people in a country that continues to promote itself as a land of opportunity. It's also got a female protagonist who is, to put it simply, metal as fuck. Chris Pulaski was, in her salad days in the 90s, the co-founder and lead guitarist for Dirt Work, who did the usual rounds of shitty bars and clubs until opportunity found them, at which time her lifelong friend and lead vocalist Terry Hunt stabbed them all in the back and went on to found his own group, Coffin, with a K, of course. The night the band were called together to sign their contracts ended in arguments, with Chris erupting in fury at the prospect of ditching the honesty of their original sound for commercially safe nu metal, geared towards an audience of, quote, cul-de-sac crybabies with their baseball hats on backwards. And then, in unexpected violence and tragedy. Now, years later, at the end of the 2010s, Chris is 47, dead broke, working at a filthy motel, and hasn't picked up her guitar in years. While Terry has gone on to become one of the world's biggest rock gods, planning a monumental farewell tour that is saturating the media. There have always been unanswered questions about just what happened on contract night. And as Chris, who has been hounded by Terry ever since that fateful evening, decides to get to the bottom of it, things go from bizarre to dangerous. First, she attempts to mend fences with her former bandmates, but this leads her down a rabbit hole of the kind that crazy conspiracy theories are made of, where Terry seems to command endless resources, including employing hitmen disguised as UPS drivers to silence anyone who threatens him. Curiously, much of what's going on appears to have been predicted by the band's final album, Troglodyte, which Terry has legally suppressed, and which told the story of the blind king who secretly watches over and controls the world from the Black Iron Mountain at the center of the earth. As Chris follows clues by following the lyrics of remembered songs, she comes upon sinister, devilish forces at work, and Terry plans nothing less than to sacrifice hundreds of thousands of souls to these forces at a massive metal festival called Hellstock. Being pop culture savvy has become something of a cliche for writers, a sign that maybe they're a little too devoted to Tarantino, or looking for easy audience approval through blatant fan service. Grady Hendrix has an approach that's knowing without feeling like he's pandering. Now, if you're a metalhead, some of your favorite bands are inevitably discussed here, and some of them even turn up. But there's a real respect for the music and the culture here. But there's also an acknowledgement of any community's dark side, especially in male-dominated subcultures where attitudes towards women are never entirely free from everyday sexism. As the story points out, Chris has learned all too well over the years how dangerous some men can be if they think a woman is better at something than they are. This little theme is also brought home later in the book when Chris bonds with a young girl named Melanie, an eager fan looking to escape her dead-end West Virginia life, and who sees Hellstock as the first step to freedom. Of course, agreeing to go with a strange guy she's only just met on Tinder has its dangers that Melanie hasn't fully appreciated. Going even deeper, We Sold Our Souls paints a picture of an America where social mobility has almost completely evaporated and can only be obtained through all those little exercises in moral compromise that can be called a form of selling out. And it reminded me of that litany in the movie Trainspotting, all about how we make choices. You know, that speech, choose life, choose a career, choose a family, choose washing machines, cars, compact disc players, electrical tin openers, choose fixed interest mortgage payments. You know, that speech. All these things that effectively sell our souls to the Black Iron Mountain, otherwise known as the machine that Pink Floyd welcomed us to. But so many people have no choice but to choose those things in a system that locks them in, where pretense of upward mobility covers up the lack of the real thing. In the novel, as Chris travels across the country, desperately trying to avoid Terry's minions, she passes through a bleak landscape of dollar stores and payday loan offices and an endless stream of homeless, and where everyone who manages to live in some comfort has had to compromise something to do so. This is a thrilling, funny, dark, and bloody novel that blasts out of your speakers with a deafening force. A novel that believes in the power of art to redeem and uplift and break shackles, and finally, in the totally metal idea that when the chips are down, a girl with a guitar has nothing to apologize for. And that is it. That's all I got for this episode of SFF180. I want to thank all of you for joining me. Remember, the most important thing, these are reviews. You will not always agree with me, but if you enjoyed watching, please hit that like button, share the video far and wide, and above all, please subscribe and hit the bell. If you haven't done so, that is how SFF180 grows as a channel. You can also support the channel at my TeePublic store and at my Patreon, where recruits into Wink's Army get little perks, like sometimes getting to see videos early, things like that. I want to thank those people for their additional awesome support. I want to thank all the rest of you for being the most metal viewers in all of BookTube. And until I see you tomorrow night for part 8 of the 12 Days of Halloween, spooky reading.